Welcome all to day 2 of the ACEEE Industrial Summer Study. Glad you could join us again this morning. I'm Prakash Rao, along with Neil Elliott. I'm your co-chair for this year's conference. I hope you all had an informative, fruitful, and fun day 1 yesterday. I thought we had some really insightful discussions around diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as a very balanced look at the state of renewable energy for the industrial sector during our morning plenary. We got to meet our Linda Latham scholars, many of whom I'm sure we're going to be seeing, and I hope we'll be seeing at this conference in years to come and in our work. And of course, we had presentations. So many great speakers across many topics. I, for one, know I'll be taking advantage of the feature where we can view presentations after the conference, because I know I missed some good ones. Congratulations to all the speakers. And we have a great day 2 planned for you, and I'm really excited about this morning's events. We actually have a double header for you this morning. So first up will be a plenary on industrial sustainability, followed by the Champions of Energy Efficiency Awards recognition program, which I always find really inspiring. So to get things started, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this morning's events, Ed Reiter. Many of you already know Ed, but for those who don't, or for those who'd like to know more, Ed is the director of the industrial program at ACEEE. In this role, Ed develops and leads the strategic vision for the industrial sector, shapes the research and policy agenda, and convenes stakeholders to accelerate energy efficiency and reductions of GHGs. Prior to joining ACEEE, Ed held several leadership roles at Dow Chemical during his 31-year career. Through 2017, he served as the director of strategic projects in Dow's Environmental Technology Center. In this role, he worked with Dow businesses, operations, and corporate groups to reduce air emissions, waste, freshwater intake, and energy use. He also served as the facilitator of Dow's corporate water strategy team, led teams to establish and pursue Dow's 2025 sustainability goals, including the first ever water goal. Working across global industrial associations, he spearheaded a roadmap for the chemical industry on paths to reduce energy and greenhouse gas emissions. In prior roles, he developed GHG and energy reduction options across Dow's global operations and pursued project funding and implementation. Earlier, he started a new market-facing business in the energy sector, led cross-functional teams to optimize processes, Six Sigma, pioneered technology that led to new materials development, and led teams to troubleshoot production challenges. He earned a doctorate in chemistry from Michigan State University and a Bachelor of Science in chemistry from Marietta College. Ed?
Okay, hey, thanks, Prakash. Welcome, everyone, to a panel on industrial sustainability. We've got an exciting panel, got 3 excellent speakers today, and then a discussion session following. A few housekeeping items. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors, particularly DTE, our host sponsor. You can find out more about the sponsors by clicking on the link on the left-hand column of your page, where you can visit their sites and learn more about their work. From the past days in this workshop, you're probably familiar with several of the other items, but I'll note that the chat box is where you want to put your questions for the speakers. And we'll have that debrief and discussion session at the end. And please use this only for the questions you want to pose to the speakers. On the left, you also see the attendee link and the resources out there as well. And the program participants link will take you to information about the presenters, bios, and copies of their presentations. So last, just a reminder to join us for the post-panel debriefs at the end of the sessions today. And with that, let's get started with our speakers. First up is Kristen Seaman, who's the Vice President, Sustainable Workplaces and Chief Sustainability Officer at General Motors. Kristen was appointed Vice President of Sustainable Workplaces and Chief Sustainability Officer in February of 2021. And she'll help lead GM to a future with zero emissions as the company contributes to take bold actions against climate change, including GM's commitment to become carbon neutral in its products and operations by 2040. She's been a member of the GM team for over 25 years, and for the past 10 years has held senior leadership positions in various engineering functions. In addition to her accomplished technical career, she's also passionate about promoting inclusion and gender equality, and she's been a champion of several programs to yield progress in these areas. She received both her bachelor's and master's degrees in electrical engineering from Oakland University, and she's a native of Warren, Michigan, and she's got the automotive industry in her genes, as her father, grandfather, and grandmother all worked in the automotive area. So with that, I'll welcome Kristen and take it away.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. As Ed mentioned, at GM, we're working every day to achieve our vision. We set a vision back in 2017 around a world with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. And that vision also includes creating sustainable solutions that improve the communities in which we live and work. We have opportunities for sustainable solutions in many areas of our business, and at the forefront of that is our products. They're the largest contributor to our carbon footprint. There are also sustainable opportunities in our operations as well as our supply chain. We believe climate change is real and urgent. We believe in an all-electric future and that it is essential to addressing this challenge. It's really the right thing to do for our planet, for our company, and for our customers. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you, perfect. So here's a high-level view of what I want to share today and for our panel discussion. Our roadmap to our 000 aspiration, as I mentioned on the first slide, again, zero emissions, zero congestion, and zero crashes. And what that does to, what does our carbon footprint look like in the auto industry? What tools are available for us to achieve these very tough goals that we've set for ourselves, as well as how can GM and the rest of the auto industry achieve carbon neutral and accomplish decarbonization. So if you want to go to the next slide. Thank you. So GM's roadmap to zero emissions includes really a complete company transformation in the shift from ICE engines or internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. Also includes our move to autonomous vehicles for zero crashes and zero congestion. From our aspiration of becoming the most inclusive company in the world, we've got technology partners like Microsoft. You see here, even on this slide, the chart on the right was actually out of our sustainability report, really showing our journey along the way to our goal of being carbon neutral. And you'll see we already struck a line through our investment there. We just recently upped that investment to over $35 billion that we've committed to both AV and EV to achieve this goal. So things are moving very fast. We have a initiative and goal set for becoming RE100 by 2035, and also focused from a human resource standpoint on hiring the right people for the design of our vehicle, engineering of our vehicle. Our story is really about bringing everybody along with us and making sure that as we transition to the future, that it's an all-inclusive one. So we're positioning ourselves to be leaders in decarbonization for our industry. We need everybody in. It includes our supply chain, our customers, really to make this transition to a low carbon future. And go to the next slide, please. So this shows our overall carbon footprint from a GM perspective. And we focus on a 10-year life cycle because it's basically the life cycle of our product in general. Obviously, there's some that are much longer than that on the road. There's a lot of people have a lot of passion around their vehicles, and so we love to see that as well. But this gives us a good idea and a good focus on where to put our energy. So you can see on here that our largest impact comes from our vehicle emissions, right? Over 75% is the customer usage of our vehicles. Our supply chain is the next most impactful at approximately 20%. Traditionally, we focused on the smaller buckets here of logistics, operations, even end of life from a recyclability standpoint. And while our scale is certainly large and those continue to have a significant impact, even though they're a small part of the pie, they're still very important. And a lot of our initiatives are focused on continuing to look for energy efficiency. We do water and energy treasure hunts in our assembly plants and our operations to try and continue to look for those opportunities as well. But our vision of an all-electric future is really aligned to addressing these large areas of impact and support our plan to be carbon neutral by 2040. We've implemented, a number of decarbonization initiatives over the years, as I said, with our operations and our logistics, and we'll continue to focus there. And you can see on the chart on the right, really where transportation and industry have an impact on the overall GHG impact for the U.S. By sector. Here is what's shown. And you can see our industries are certainly a big part of that, as well as clearly electricity. And we believe our all-electric future from a vehicle standpoint needs to be based and partnered with 100% renewable energy that they're charged with as well. So we've got a lot to do. Our industry is clearly a big part of the pie, and we want to be leading that change towards a more sustainable future for all of us. You go to the next slide, please. So looking at what tools are available to support our efforts. In 2018, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warned that global warming must not exceed 1.5 degrees C in order to avoid really the catastrophic impacts of climate change. So in order to achieve this, GHG emissions must be cut in half by 2030 and then drop to net zero by 2050. So using models to predict the rise in the Earth's temperature and the amount of CO2 needed to keep that rise below that 1.5 degrees C, scientists have developed science-based targets by industry sector. And then these science-based targets help show companies how much and how quickly they need to reduce their GHG emissions in order to prevent the worst effects of climate change. And GM this year got submitted and approved our science-based targets, which are aligned with the most aggressive goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. So really excited to see that progress that we're making, as well as the many others in the industry and across industries that are taking that step. So, moving on, the first step towards action is to reduce, as I said earlier, and focus on energy efficiency and conservation. It's a little bit of what our kids lose, right? It's reduce, reuse, recycle. And so the more that we can do that, even in our own facilities and our own operations, the better we're going to be in the long run. So whether it's the automobile or the assembly plant using efficient equipment and conserving energy wherever possible, it has a significant impact on the environment, reduces that impact of our carbon footprint, as well as saves money in the long run. So the only way to decarbonize the power industry is by using renewable electricity and thereby eliminating carbon emissions from fossil fuels. As we talked, we believe that that's absolutely key towards our all-electric future. And as we showed earlier, or I showed on the previous slide, vehicle emissions is the largest impact to our carbon footprint. So fuel switching from fossil fuels to either low carbon renewable fuels or to renewable electricity is going to be needed for our entire industry to decarbonize. Our vision of that all electric future, where internal combustion engines burning gasoline are switched to electric vehicles charged with renewable electricity, are going to be the key to that success. And although not, really economical yet, capturing CO2 or carbon capture and storing it can aid in these decarbonizing emissions efforts when there's no other alternatives that exist. And protecting and growing the natural resources like trees that will naturally convert CO2 to oxygen can also help to decarbonize our atmosphere. But again, that's a step down the line that we won't go to unless necessary. We'll discuss a little bit more in detail on the next slide. So as I said, while our operations emissions or scope 1 and 2 are very small, they are controllable. And even though small in our overall footprint, because of the size of our, at the scale that we have across the company and across the globe, there's still a significant impact. And they are controllable with a focus on energy efficiency and conservation first, then followed by our commitment to 100% renewable electricity, or RE 100 by 2030 in the US, and then globally we have that goal by 2035. Energy reduction is part of our business plans, along with safety, cost, quality, and that keeps us focused on meeting our targets. As I said, we look for opportunities, we perform energy treasure hunts, we use energy performance contracts for implementation of projects with utility incentives where possible. And as we transition to a zero emissions future, it's important that we're bringing our employees, our suppliers, our dealers along throughout that transformation. So we're working closely with our suppliers to identify opportunities in their facilities, as well as encouraging and working with them to transition to 100% renewable energy as quickly as possible. So we rely on our partners such as Energy Star, DOE for benchmarking, best practice sharing, and networking. GM has been recognized by Energy Star for sustained excellence in energy management for 10 times. And we've really embraced the 50,001 Ready with DOE and have most of our US plants recognized with that certification as well. So again, it's an integrated approach, working with our partners in every aspect of the supply chain, utilities, and our own employees and facilities to make this happen. I'll go to the next slide. So earlier this year, we announced really our two biggest goals and very bold goals to support our vision of a zero emissions future. So we plan to be carbon neutral in our global products and operations by 2040, and we aspire to eliminate tailpipe emissions from new light-duty vehicles by 2035. We're well on our way to an all-electric future. We have a commitment to launch 30 new EVs globally and an investment spend of over $35 billion by 2025. And we're aggressively going out after every single aspect of what it takes to put everyone in an EV. We need millions of EVs to be on the road to make a meaningful impact towards building that zero emissions future. And we're approaching that by putting products in every segment and every price point so that everybody can be part of that transition. We believe we're positioned to design, engineer, and produce EVs that satisfy the needs of every customer and continue on our mission of building a competitive advantage, both in batteries, software, vehicle integration. Manufacturing is certainly a strength for us, as well as the customer experience. So, and regarding the 2035 aspiration, that's really about us pushing ourselves to try and move as fast as possible towards a future with zero emissions. We're absolutely serious about that goal, and we recognize that it's going to take support from policymakers, industry collaboration, and work to bring our customers, employees, and our dealers along as well. So last slide, just thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today and tell a little bit about our story to a roadmap to zero emissions. As GM's Chief Sustainability Officer, I know zero is a very lofty vision, but with the entire industry's help and with EV sales focus on efficiency, RE 100, we can sustain the environment. And as Ms. Mathi declared in this quote, it's really about doing the right thing and focusing on it together from many different angles. So thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
Okay, well, Kristen, thanks so much for illustrating for us what the transition to net zero emissions looks like in the automotive industry. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you for that. And I think you started us to all to think about several of the sectors in the industrial space, and one of the big customer bases here is automotive. One of the main materials going into automobiles at present is steel. So our next presenter, Tracy Forrester, will tell us a little bit about Cleveland Cliffs and the transition that they're on. Tracy Forrester is an Executive Vice President, Environmental and Sustainability at Cleveland Cliffs. She is responsible for environmental affairs and sustainability functions and oversees the company's coking and coal operations. Previously, she was Executive Vice President of Business Development, where she was responsible for developing emerging business opportunities.
Hi, Ed, and the summer study participants. It's a pleasure to join you today. If we could put the slides up, I'd appreciate it. Thanks. Cleveland Cliffs was founded in 1847 as an iron ore mine operator, and we're now the largest producer of flat-rolled steel and iron ore pellets in North America. Next slide, please. During 2020, we transformed from a mining company supplying the iron ore pellets to North American steel companies into the largest flat-rolled steel producer in North America. We had a strategy focused on American steel. The acquisition of AK Steel in March of last year aligned with our positive outlook for automotive production and manufacturing in the United States. The second step of our transformation into a fully integrated American steelmaker was completed with our acquisition of substantially all of the operations of ArcelorMittal USA in December of 2020. At the end of last year, we also completed construction and began producing hot briquetted iron at our new direct reduction plant in Toledo. Next slide, please. So this slide shows our current footprint, which now spans from Canada to the Iron Range in Minnesota as far south as Alabama and Mississippi, but the concentration of which remains the Great Lakes region. For context, prior to March of 2020, our footprint included only the 5 iron ore mines and pellet plants up north, our Cleveland, Ohio headquarters, and our direct reduced iron plant under construction in Toledo, Ohio. Now we have 8 blast furnaces, 4 electric arc furnaces, and numerous downstream steel producers. Our portfolio has expanded from iron ore pellets to include flat-rolled carbon steel, stainless, electrical, plate, tin plate, and long steel products, carbon and stainless steel tubing, hot and cold stamping and tooling, and hot briquetted iron. Next slide. We acknowledge that global warming is a problem and that carbon dioxide is the proxy. We can't fix a problem unless we understand the facts involved. The American steel industry released 90 million tons of Scope 1 and 2 CO2 emissions as compared to China's steel industry releasing 2.5 billion tons of emissions. China's blast furnaces and steel mills alone are 2/3 of the total global emissions generated by the steel industry annually. The US steel industry generates only 2% of total emissions, whereas the rest of the world is at 34%. As you can see, the American steel industry is not the source of this problem. Next slide, please. The American steel industry is among the cleanest and most energy efficient in the world, and we have the lowest greenhouse gas intensity amongst all major steel producing countries for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. In the US, the production of 1 metric ton of steel releases 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide. For context, think of each car on the road today as being roughly equivalent to 1 metric ton of steel. Each ton of steel produced in China generates 2.5 times more CO2 than in the US. Germany releases 80% more than the US for each ton of steel produced. Next slide. The American steel industry leads in tons of CO2 emissions per ton of steel produced because of the high percentage of electric arc furnaces that consume scrap or recycled steel, the abundance of natural gas, and the use of cleaner feedstock in the form of specialty iron ore pellets and now hot briquetted iron. 70% of steel production in the US is by use of EAFs today, soon to be 75% given the number of these electric arc furnaces under construction or being planned today. The other 25 to 30% of steel is produced using blast furnaces or basic oxygen furnaces, which rely on heavy use of scrap. This practice stems from the 20th century development when the US had scrap available in large quantities. We now face a worldwide shortage of prime scrap availability, which is creating a demand for virgin iron units and steel production necessary to create higher grades of steel. In the US, we have natural gas-based electricity where we can use natural gas as the sole reductant in the production of direct reduced iron like our HBI, and we use natural gas as a supplemental reductant in blast furnaces. This is because we have abundant resources of the natural gas near our blast furnaces. Finally, US blast furnaces use 100% iron ore pellets, a cleaner feedstock than sinter, which is used elsewhere. Cliffs no longer uses center feed in our process. Because we run using only pellets, US blast furnaces emit 85% less CO2 than those that use sinter. Next slide, please. Cleveland-Cliffs is doing our part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Our 8 operating blast furnaces are among the lowest greenhouse gas intensive integrated operations in the world. We've pledged to achieve a 25% greenhouse gas reduction from our 2017 levels by the year 2030. We set this goal based on facts and believe this to be a realistic target, not pie in the sky or meant to grab some short-lived headline. Our commitment is based on 5 strategic priorities. We have invested $1 billion and developed domestically sourced high-quality iron ore feedstock to produce hot briquetted iron. We are implementing energy efficiency and clean energy projects. We're investing in the development of carbon capture technology and planning to capture the carbon only after the amount of carbon is so low we can capture it. We recognize this capture needs to occur at the tail end when the amount is already low. We are enhancing our greenhouse gas emissions transparency and sustainability focus. We support public policies that facilitate greenhouse gas reduction in the US steel industry. Next slide, please. Our solution to the CO2 problem is to take advantage of what is readily available to us now, natural gas. We make steel in a blast furnace, as pictured here, by melting iron ore pellets, adding limestone or slag, and our HBI, which has been pre-reduced, plus the coke. The coke is still necessary because it serves as a reductant and source of heat, but most importantly lends a mechanical purpose of burden support in the furnaces. That is what is needed to make the advanced higher quality steel products in demand today. If we did not add natural gas, the hot air reacts with the coke to produce more CO2. By using the natural gas, or CH4, we produce hydrogen and use the hydrogen as a reductant. Hydrogen is receiving a lot of attention globally these days. The reason it receives so much attention in Europe is because Europe does not have the natural gas readily available. The chart here shows the fuel rate at our blast furnace in Middletown, Ohio, as an example. By injecting natural gas, we achieve a 9% CO2 reduction. This reduces the amount of coke used by 750,000 tons per year, which is equivalent to 1 coke battery saved per year. Next slide, please. In 2020, we began production at our new direct reduction plant in Toledo, Ohio. Our journey to bring the DR plant from idea to operation showcases Cliffs' approach to sustainable development. Our DR plant is an important step in our strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In this process, the only raw materials are natural gas and DR-grade iron ore pellets. Our vision was to develop a world-class facility that produces high-quality iron ore feedstock for cleaner steel production while minimizing environmental impacts and bringing value to the surrounding community and region. Our DR plant uses natural gas both to reduce the iron oxide and heat the process, producing significantly less greenhouse gas emissions compared to other energy sources that utilize coal or coke as the reductant source. Our HBI product also enables reductions in greenhouse gas emissions with downstream usage in our blast furnaces and EAFs. Using HBI in the steelmaking process instead of scrap or foreign imported pig iron requires less energy and generates lower greenhouse gas emissions by about 70%, equal to about 70% less CO2. This is because we are replacing the FE in the furnaces that has already been reduced and therefore reducing the amounts of the carbon in the form of coke, coal, and scrap needed to make higher quality steel products. As part of our commitment to greenhouse gas reductions, we will evaluate the use of hydrogen here in Toledo as a replacement for natural gas. The plant was designed to be ready for hydrogen. The issue is, the question I should say, is when will hydrogen become commercially available in significant quantities? Next slide. Although the American steel industry is among the cleanest and most energy efficient in the world, we continue to pursue opportunities to further reduce our greenhouse gas footprint. With our recent growth, we have an even greater opportunity to be an industry leader in addressing climate change. As an example of our commitment, we have the Burns Harbor carbon capture and sequestration study underway. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Energy awarded funds for several projects supporting decarbonization efforts, including this study. Dastur International will provide the initial engineering design for a cost-competitive, technically viable industrial-scale system to capture 50 to 70% of available blast furnace greenhouse gas emissions. The study will also examine available carbon sequestration opportunities. Many of our operations produce an energy-rich gas as a byproduct of our manufacturing processes. This gas may be flared, or it can be captured and transported to an on-site powerhouse. At the powerhouse, the gas is used as boiler fuel to generate high-pressure steam, which then powers a steam turbine generating unit to generate both electricity and condensed steam. Both are then returned back to the operations. The steam is used for process and heating needs, and the electricity offsets our purchased power. We are installing upgrades at our Cleveland Works facility to maximize self-generated electricity, which will reduce dependency on grid electricity by approximately 51 megawatt hours. We also have a multi-year capital investment project underway at our Burns Harbor facility to rebuild that powerhouse, and we expect that investment to provide the operation with 75% of its total power requirements. Next slide. The single most important objective of decarbonization is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Industry must take advantage of readily available opportunities to reduce emissions while working to advance future technologies. The U.S. has the least greenhouse gas intensive steel industry of all the major steel producing countries. Blast furnaces using pellets, natural gas instead of coal as the reductant, and HBI and the significant proportion of EAFs to blast furnace make the American steel industry the environmental benchmark of the world. Natural gas affords immediate term reduction opportunities for heavy industry. Other areas of the world, such as Europe, do not have natural gas to provide for near-term emissions reductions. U.S. industry should use natural gas to its advantage while concurrently working to develop breakthrough technologies that will further advance decarbonization. Next slide. Thanks very much for the opportunity to be here.
Okay, Tracy, thanks very much for your comments relative to steel. Sorry if I may have missed some of your bio there, but if folks are interested in more of the background information, they can find it there on the left-hand side for all speakers. So next, let me introduce Brooke Beebe, who's the Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Engagement at Hemlock Semiconductor Group. She leads HSC's stakeholder engagement functions, including government relations, public relations, marketing, sustainability, community, and employee engagement. Through her work, she focuses on advancing HSC's mission to be the world's preferred supplier of polysilicon and vision of being a family-friendly, community-oriented, high-tech employer whose employees and products have a positive effect on the world. Prior to joining HSC, Brooke was State Government Affairs Director at the Dow Chemical Company, representing Dow in the Midland region, and leading the U.S. State Government Affairs team. She joined Dow's Washington, D.C. office in 2007 as political director, then served as Federal Government Affairs Director, Facility and Supply Chain Security, Transportation, and Infrastructure. I had the pleasure of working with Brooke when I was at Dow Chemical, and definitely looking forward to her comments. She holds a JD from George Washington University Law School and a BA in philosophy from Gustavus Adolphus College in Minnesota. So with that, Brooke, we look forward to your comments.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Ed. It's great to be with you today, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion as well. So thanks for that introduction. Again, Brooke Beebe, Senior Vice President with Hemlock Semiconductor here in Hemlock, Michigan. I'm going to explain a little bit about Hemlock, what we do, the product we provide, how we make, a little bit about how we make our product, and then talk about the trends that we're seeing really in one of the key industries that we serve, decarbonization in the solar industry. So let me start a little bit with Hemlock. So we make polysilicon, as Ed noted, and polysilicon is a hyper pure form of silicon. And it's the foundational material for the semiconductor industry, the solar industry, and has growing application as we look to the future of high capacity batteries. When we think about charge density and what's going to be needed, silicon is really the key to unlocking that. So, you know, it's an exciting place to be. We're really at the core, at the foundation of these three really critical industries for our future, for our clean energy future. And at Hemlock, we like to say that we connect and energize our world through silicon. And you know, fun fact, you know, we've got a significant supply a significant amount of the world's semiconductor grade polysilicon. And so, you know, meetings like this, I always like to say, in this virtual world, everybody is using our product. Your laptop or your tablet, your phone has lots of semiconductor chips that are built, you know, a large number of them built on Hemlock polysilicon. You know, our manufacturing facility is a large manufacturing facility, and making polysilicon is very, very energy intensive. So we are heavily focused. It's really in our DNA to focus on energy reduction, you know, all the time, continuous improvement. Just to give a sense of scale, I mean, we are actually the largest consumer of electricity in the state of Michigan at our site here in Hemlock. By orders of magnitude. Our utility is Consumers Energy, and when you take Consumers' next 10 largest customers and add up their load, we're using more here at Hemlock than those next 10 largest customers combined. I think we've equated that to a little bit more than the electricity used in the cities of Lansing and Ann Arbor, Michigan combined. And so, you know, focusing on energy reduction is, again, really kind of core to our operational discipline. When we look, you know, over the last 5 years, it's a capital intensive industry. We've spent about $100 million in capital investments in this site, and roughly a quarter of that has been focused on projects that are related to reducing energy waste. You know, part of that as well is our work with our utility. So as the largest consumer of electricity of our utilities, you know, we also work within their programs and how to you know, work with and make better the programs that they have, because ultimately our use of energy has an impact on the grid. And so one of the projects I wanted to highlight that we've worked on over the last several years is really getting very granular with our data analytics about our energy use and looking at how we can shift our energy use to more off-peak times, you know, kind of helping our utility to manage their peak load, and ultimately, you know, having an impact on the resources needed to serve the grid because of the you know, potential swings in our load. So that's one kind of partnership that we have worked on to really not only impact our own energy use, but impact the resources needed to serve us and to serve other customers in Michigan. And so this focus on energy for Hemlock really has, started for us as a cost journey, as for many companies, but what's really become apparent over the last several years, as the world starts to focus on decarbonization, is that, of course, energy reduction also leads to carbon reduction. And so part of our journey at Hemlock has been to shift our focus a bit, and in our thinking about sustainability, in our thinking about our energy reduction and the impact that it has on our carbon footprint. And this really came to light to us, especially within the last 5 years, as we started to see signals in the marketplace focusing on carbon in a much more intense way than we have in the past. We're very upstream in both of our industries. We're, this foundational material, but within the solar industry, about 5 years ago, we started to get inquiries from our customers about carbon footprint. And this was really stemming from a regulatory requirement in France for the solar industry to understand the carbon footprint of the solar panels that they were installing for utility installations in France, and going all the way back to metallurgical grade silicon. And so this signal sent from regulators to customers, ultimately back through the marketplace, really got us focused on the carbon footprint of our industry, and looking across the solar industry in particular, and understanding both our carbon footprint through a robust life cycle assessment that we conducted our first in 2017, looking at academic literature. And what we discovered is that in the solar industry in particular, not all solar is created equal, and that there are significant differences in the carbon footprint of solar panels that are produced. And a lot of it has to do with the polysilicon source. That, as I noted, it's a very energy intensive process to make polysilicon, and so it has a very significant impact ultimately on the embodied carbon of a solar panel that's being installed. And so this was a kind of an aha moment for us, and really honestly kind of the paradox of solar in some ways, that you've got solar panels being produced to serve decarbonization and our future, of clean energy, but that in many instances, and a large portion of panels being based on materials that are being produced using almost exclusively coal-fired electricity in other parts of the world. And so I think what I want to focus on is the opportunity that we have as industrial energy users to continue to send these really strong demand signals into the marketplace about decarbonization in supply chains. And what's really, really exciting in solar in particular is that the solar industry is on the cusp of another period of tremendous growth. I mean, we're all, talking about and thinking about decarbonization, both of our own operations, but also of our energy sources that are supplying our operations. Kristen talked about electrification of vehicles, and that being, ultimately electrification of vehicles being based on renewable energy sources, to power them. And so we're going to see tremendous growth. The solar industry has grown a lot over the last 10 years in terms of increase in installation, but that's going to explode again really over the next two to 3 decades. And to serve that need, there's going to be more need for manufacturing capacity built in the solar industry. And so what's really exciting is that we're not necessarily talking about decarbonizing an industry, but we're talking about the opportunity to avoid a carbon intensive industry moving forward by sending the right demand signals from purchasers about where and how we want to see in this case, solar manufacturing capacity be built to serve those renewable energy needs going forward for the future. So I'll pause there. I look forward to our discussion today. Again, we at Hemlock really believe that there's this tremendous opportunity to decarbonize and really create this virtuous cycle in the solar industry, where you've got a low carbon energy source that can be produced more sustainably moving forward. So I look forward to our discussion and hearing from the audience and other panelists. So thanks so much.
Well, Brooke, thanks very much for your comments and the vision that you shared with us. From all three of you speakers, we've heard some common elements, and perhaps that's a good place to start with discussion. I'll encourage folks to add some more questions there to the questions part on the right-hand side, but just picking up on some of the questions there, and if I'm not able to answer or ask all these questions to the panelists, perhaps the panelists can address them online here. But the first one I'll raise is the question of supply chain partnerships. Kristen, you raised this, and I also heard it a bit in Tracy's comments, and also in Brooks, that you're not alone in this endeavor. So my question there, and I'll start with Kristen, and then go to Tracy and Brooke, is how do you see working with supply chains? Are you able to work with them to decarbonize their component of the supply chain, perhaps encouraging them to take up ISO 50001 or become real advocates of energy efficiency or others? So, Kristen, what do you see as tangible ways that companies can work with the supply chain to get those reductions that are in SBTs?
Sure, great question. So thanks for that. First off, I would say one of our initial step with our suppliers is partnership and education and idea sharing. So we have a supplier sustainability council that meets on it's at least monthly. It may be up to twice a month in some cases as we continue to transition down this journey. And we work with them on ideas and practices and policies. One of the things that we started recently, and it was before my time, so I can't tell you an exact date, but is working with our tier one suppliers, our key tier one partners, and getting their information into a system so that we can at least measure our carbon footprint with them. So reporting, as I think many people know, is a big challenge, and really getting a grasp on how large of a challenge or how small of a challenge we have. So we've been doing that, and we're well on our way to our goal of getting all of our suppliers in there, but really focusing on those tier ones first. And as we do that, we then work with them on, what are their reduction goals. So right now, we have partnered with them on some of the approaches that we've taken in our own facilities, like we talked about with Energy Star and adopting the standards around, 50,001, et cetera, as well as getting them to report their information through CDP and setting official reduction goals based on that. So, it's a true partnership, just like everything else that we do with our supply base. We can't do it alone. We can't be successful if they're not successful. And so as we do things like set our science-based targets and our goals, we've shared that information about our approach and our ideas and the logic behind it through the supplier council, and really getting, in some cases, maybe competitors sharing information as well as part of those councils, because it's one of those, it's a little bit like our message around inclusion, as Mary Barr announced when she said she wanted us to be the most inclusive company in the world. She said, but I want everybody to be the most inclusive company in the world, right? It's not something that we're going to be proud to accomplish alone. It needs all of us. And so as we go through these discussion, reporting is first, identifying where there's opportunities is second, and ultimately achieving those tough goals and setting those goals will be the last accomplishment.
Great. Tracy, any adds to that?
No, I agree with everything that Kristen said. We can't do it alone. It makes the whole effort moot. But I'll just add to it that Cliffs has long engaged with partnerships with our customers like GM to develop products to contribute to the low carbon future. We have a robust research and innovation center in Westchester, Ohio. We are also a member of the Energy Star program, and Cliffs is also the leading domestic producer of specialty electrical steel grades. So we work with customers to develop those electrical steel grades for domestic EV motor production. And I think that's pretty important because we do that right here in the US.
Great. Okay, Brooke, any builds?
Yeah, I would just note, so I think one of the challenges we've found on this journey of understanding again, particularly the solar supply chain and decarbonization opportunities is that people are interested, but the challenge becomes how do I do it, right? How do I get the information that I need? How do I verify that information? And so I think one of the things that we've really focused on, we're a founding member of an organization called the Ultra Low Carbon Solar Alliance, and that's a consortium of supply chain companies that are all interested in actions that can be taken to decarbonize the solar supply chain. And we're working with a third-party organization, the Green Electronics Council, on how do we create a label, a standard, some sort of common metric, so that customers who want to have an impact and send the demand signal that I talked about have something to point to that's verifiable and that they can trust, and that has a common template and set of information that they can review about carbon footprint. But these are huge challenges, as noted. The kind of the reporting and the consistency of information and metrics is a challenge. We're right now tackling that in a sector specific way, I think.
Oh, okay, thanks for your comments there. Looking at the questions, another set of questions, I believe, deals with embodied carbon. Brooke, you had raised the comment relative to folks in France, looking at the life cycle of some of the products all the way back to polysilicon. As we look at this landscape of getting to net zero and thinking across the whole life cycle, for example, Kristen, you had mentioned EVs and lithium-ion batteries depend on the lithium. So you have to think about the whole perspective all the way back to the source products. How do you three see working with the entirety of supply chains to deal with not only the raw materials, but the end use of the products as well? So let me go in reverse order this time. Brooke, you want to start with that from the polysilicon intro on that, and then we'll go to Tracy and then back to Kristen.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean that is so I guess I'd go back to my earlier comments. I mean right now we're focusing on this in a bit of a sector specific way, and I think part of that is that every supply chain is very unique and different and has its own challenges and opportunities, and so I think to some extent that needs it needs to be done that way. Although I think common reporting metrics again that give so you can compare apples to apples ultimately is a direction that we need to head. But I think taking these initial steps of looking in a sector specific way to understand the supply chain and its unique challenges and opportunities is a place to start.
Tracy, any builds there?
Well, I would build on that by saying there truly is no one size fits all approach. We do have to focus on, I think, what is proven and actionable technology in each of our sectors to start making a difference today. And yes, the cooperation, and I agree completely that there needs to be common reporting metrics, so we are comparing apples to apples.
Kristen.
Yeah, so I guess I'll share just a few examples, because I think as Brooke and Tracy said too, it really is approaching it at multiple angles, and really looking across the entire value chain and the entire process that we go through. So some of the things we're focused on, certainly from a battery technology standpoint, of reducing the amount of rare earth metals that we need to produce them, so less material, lower cost, higher efficiency, to get at that reduction at the core. We made an announcement recently where we're working with Controlled Thermal Resources to help secure a sustainable US-based lithium supply and a more sustainable process, less environmental impact compared to traditional processes such as pit mining or evaporation ponds. So really focused at how we get, and how our suppliers get the materials needed to build our product. And then maybe on the tail end of a customer usage, we have a partnership that we announced with Shell, a very traditional, high carbon industry, but where we've worked to set up a system for our customers where they can basically get fixed free electricity rates if based on when they charge. So if they sign up for the program, then we get to provide them with free electricity for charging their EV vehicles. But it's based on using renewable electricity coming from sources such as wind and solar, through Shell Energy North America's subsidiary, MP2 Energy. And so as we look at the entire value chain and approach it from reducing the materials required, making sure that those materials are coming from a sustainable process that has the least amount of impact on the environment, and then at the tail end, looking for creative ways for our customers to be having access and using renewable energy. I think we have some success stories across the way, and we need to continue to look at it at every point, because identifying where there's a challenge in the measurement piece of it, as well as Brooke and Tracy talked about, is a huge challenge.
Super. Thanks for the comments there. I realize we're running short of time, but appreciate all the questions that have come in. We've talked about technology, we've talked about supply chain, the sustainability across the entire life cycle. One of the areas we haven't touched on yet is policy, and where policy can be an enabler. And so the question I put out there is, what types of policies do you see that are needed in this space to be an enabler at the state, local, federal level? And what kinds of policies would you see that are really needed to support decarbonization goals? So let me start with Brooke, and we'll go that direction.
Yeah, well, clearly, I think demand signals are important, right? That there's demand, and that there will be a market for that values materials that have a lower embodied carbon, I think is an important factor. And you can see some of that, to come through the private sector, but clearly regulatory support, for that is important. I noted we sort of started that way with this signal from French regulators, and that's a way to start.
Okay, it looks like I got about another minute left. Tracy, quickly.
I think that to effectuate the needed reduction of global greenhouse gas emissions, the government policy needs to ensure that emission-intensive products from other countries are not afforded a competitive advantage over the U.S. products.
Okay, Kristen, any quick builds there?
Yeah, I mean, just to highlight, obviously, we're working with industry as well as regulators on policies that encourage and incentivize the transition to electric vehicles. That includes R&D infrastructure, obviously charging and making sure that is available for everybody in all areas, including, multi-dwelling locations, et cetera. We don't want to leave anyone out.
As you mentioned earlier, someone mentioned earlier, everybody's got to be in the game. This one, because it's a very difficult transition over the next 30 years. We got to get started, but we need everybody on board. So again, Brooke, Tracy, Kristen, thank you so much for willing to share your time with us and for your comments and perspectives. And we look forward to interacting with you on Indeed. This is a journey that we're all on. So with that, thanks. We'll end this panel, and I'll transition over to the champions and energy efficiency presentations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just doing screen arrangements. Okay, so we're back on at this point. We would like to acknowledge the champions of energy efficiency for lifetime achievement in this space. The first one up is Todd from Bonneville Power Administration. And Todd's being recognized for his profound impact on industrial energy efficiency across 20 years or more. Where he's provided leadership and providing customer service, initiation of programs, and equitable strategic energy management outreach. So let me give you a bit of his background and then invite Todd to say a couple of words. One is that he's been employed there for, as I mentioned, some 20 some years, but as he's worked in this space, he's been one of the prime implementers with Cascade Energy and Triple Point staff on adapting established measurement and verification techniques to continuously measure and verify energy savings for strategic energy management. He's also managed the development, training, application of BPA's measurement, verification protocols and guidelines, including the selection guide. This body of work provides BPA, Pacific Northwest Utility customers with an overview of protocols, application, reference guides. Todd's got a BS and an MS in mechanical engineering from the University of Portland and the University of Washington, respectively. So with that, Todd, any comments?
Yes, thank you, Ed, and to ACEEE for this award, and to whoever nominated me. It's much appreciated, and this wouldn't have been possible without several others who shared their wisdom and provided me with encouragement and support along the way. From BPA, Jennifer Eskel and Chris Milan, our industrial sector and tech leads for roughly 3/4 of my 20 years at BPA before they retired. And to Jennifer, Wood, and Aaron Hope, who formed a heck of an industrial team many years, which continued with new additions, Eric Mollendor and Nathan Kelly. And from Energy Smart Industrial, Cascade Energy, there's too many worth mentioning here, but Steve Martin, Eric Holman, Sarah York, and Eva Urbach have been top-notch industrial program implementers, great collaborators on a number of fronts, and wonderful, caring people who I just continue to find myself feeling productive and in good spirits when involved in one or more meetings with them, even those more challenging ones. And of course, grateful to my family, who I love dearly. And just, there's been a lot of satisfaction these last 12 years of Energy Smart Industrial, working with our utility customers, of course, ESI, Cascade Energy staff, especially our energy performance tracking team. Check out that MTNR reference guide, now revision 9. Neighbors, Energy Trust of Oregon, Kim, Katie, and many others. Northwest Collaborative Leadership Team and M&V Working Group. Please check out those still highly relevant white papers, and our BPA M&V protocol contractors and regional stakeholders. And the list goes on. But I'll end with EVO, IPMVP staff, CMVP trainers, and volunteers too. Please check out the new guide documents in the COVID impacts white paper. And And just I look forward to my time ahead, continuing to work with ESI, BPA staff, advancing M&V, and hopefully contributing to decarbonization efforts in industrial space and participating in more ACEEE summer studies too. Thank you.
Todd, thanks for those comments and for your contributions to the field. It certainly takes a community or a family to make some really big impact in the energy efficiency space, and your work has demonstrated success there. Next, we'd like to recognize Lauren Castantini. Lauren unfortunately couldn't join us due to some other work that she has going on, but she's being recognized for bringing innovative technologies and practices into the market and influencing policies, regulations, and legislation at all levels of government. Although Lauren wasn't able to join us today due to a prior commitment, she did send a statement, which I'll read. And she says, I am so honored to be recognized by ACEEE for the 2021 Energy Policy Award. Congratulations to all the other champions of energy efficiency. Unfortunately, I won't be able to accept this award in person due to a scheduling conflict, and I wish to be there to congratulate you all. Over the years, I've been a grateful partner with ACEEE and witnessed a foundational impact they have had on energy efficiency by championing advocacy, research, and policy. On the personal level, ACEEE and Steve Nadell helped launch the direction of my career as we've worked together on many key national initiatives, such as the Consortium for Energy Efficiency Formation, Appliance Standard Strategies, and Market Transformation Initiatives. As many of you know, Nexent recently joined Resource Innovations. Our combined team is excited to bring deep expertise in energy efficiency programs and software to help create equal access to clean energy with diverse partnerships to address the challenges of climate change and to reimagine this industry, which has in so many ways on the horizon. As leaders in energy efficiency, we will continue to influence regulations and legislation that will help achieve our goals towards a more sustainable energy future. Okay, next up, we've got Christina Garcia, and Christina is being recognized for fiercely advocating for market transformation at the intersection of clean energy and diversity. Unfortunately, Christina couldn't be with us as well, but she also sent a comment. And she noted that this recognition helps to shine light on the need to be intentional when it comes to diversity and inclusion in our industry. I'm grateful for this award and hope to continue to use the group Latness and sustainability to bridge the gap for those that are underrepresented. Next up is Peter Gurley. And Peter, as many of you know, lost his battle with cancer in January of 2021. So this is a posthumous award. I'll invite Mike Galeazano in a couple minutes to provide some additional information on Peter, but I'll read some of the background information so you know of Peter's contributions to this area, and then Mike can come in with some more personal information. But Peter here is being recognized for his leadership of successful programs, including the Regional Manufacturing Institute's Next Generation Energy Efficiency Gains Program. So Peter served as Vice President of the Regional Manufacturing Institute, RMI, in Maryland, where he worked to improve the image of manufacturing, develop a workforce pipeline, and provide energy services and lead manufacturers to an analog to digital transformation. He managed RMI's energy program for Maryland manufacturers being served by the Delmarva Power and Pepco utilities. He also managed a $3 million energy efficiency program for Maryland manufacturers served by BG&E, saving them close to $2 million off their energy bills annually. He served in senior positions with both private and public international organizations, including the U.S. Agency for International Development. He established business offices throughout Asia, and his strategic efforts helped U.S. businesses realize over $730 million in clean technology transitions in the region, and a water partnership between Maryland and Singapore's Public Utilities Board. He received a BA from Frostburg University in political science and French, and completed executive courses on trade, finance, and sustainability from Thunderbird American Graduate School. At this point, I'll invite Mike, who's the president of RMI there in Maryland, to provide a few comments.
Ed, thank you very much. And also congratulations to all the others that are being recognized today. But I would like to begin to thank the council for recognizing Peter Gourlay. He's just an incredible individual. But I also want to give thanks to Dr. Mary Tung, who is the director of the Maryland Energy Administration. All the accomplishments that we made with Peter here in Maryland was as a result of our partnership with the Maryland Energy Administration, which is actually a part of Governor Hogan's office here in Maryland. Also, Eric Kaufman and Kate Whiteleather from MEA. They've just been amazing partners that have allowed us to accomplish the work that we did. When I first met Peter Gourlay some 20 years ago, he was the one that helped me to understand the importance of sustainability, energy efficiency, and manufacturing as it related to the environment and again into energy efficiency. So in many ways, he was my teacher. Shortly after that, we were able to get funds to support an initiative on energy efficiency gains. I can tell you that Peter single-handedly, with a very diverse, small team of engineers and support staff over the last 8 to 10 years, did remarkable work in reaching out to manufacturers here in Maryland to get them to see that how important it was to focus on energy efficiency. The program has been enormously successful, and much of the testament of that has been when we heard manufacturers speak out on how they would have never have done this if it hadn't been for RMI. Well, RMI was Peter Gourlay. RMI was Peter Gourlay. And I think everybody understands that when you have great accomplishments, it comes because you have great leadership. Peter Gourlay was my best friend. He was a truly remarkable human being. His inner spirit is what made our program so successful. He knew how to work with people. He understood the importance of energy efficiency, but he also understood how to energize people, to get them engaged, to get them involved. I guess his personal mission in life was to just make things better for society, better for communities. And in his dealings with people, I can tell you, to a person here in Maryland, they'll tell you that Peter Gourlay was one of the most remarkable good guys that they have ever met. I know his family and his 2 daughters will greatly appreciate this recognition. So to the council members and to those who selected him, I just want you to understand, you really created great significance for those of us here in Maryland who cared so much for Peter, who loved him, and who today still miss him. Thank you very much.
Mike, thanks so much for your touching comments there relative to Peter and the personal perspective of the impact that he had, not only for energy efficiency, but also on the human dimensions. And yes, please relay this recognition to his family members as well. Next, we have Shante Harris, and she's being recognized for her longtime efforts to scale innovative and impactful nationwide campaigns, technologies, and ideas in the public and private sectors. So just a little bit of background here. She leads the Investor Network and Corporate Partnerships for Venture for Climate Tech, a climate tech venture studio and accelerator sourcing the best climate tech solutions across the globe. She also oversees the For Climate Tech Global Innovation Challenge and is spearheading the exploration of a thesis for a new financial mechanism funding early stage climate tech alongside the 2M Capital team. Named by America on Tech as an innovator and disruptor in tech policy and women's e-news, as a pioneering woman in sustainability, Shante is passionate about urban innovation, building sustainable cities, cross-sector collaboration, and tapping into community to launch better solutions, initiatives, and technologies. She has worked to scale nationwide programs, technologies, and ideas for the Obama administration, Fortune 500 companies, and startups. Most recently, she launched and grew 2 new practice areas at an urban and political strategy firm dedicated to business strategy and sustainability, with deep expertise in developing go-to-market strategies for startups and established companies across the sustainability industry. She brings unique insight into building ecosystems with a shared vision for people and the planet. Shante is also a venture partner with Republic and NextGen. Shante?
Hi, can you all hear me? Great. Hi, everyone.
Yes.
Well, I would like to start by saying thank you for this distinguished honor from the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. I really appreciate all who have deliberated on this year's nominees, and I'm sure it wasn't easy, as I can imagine there was a pool of esteemed candidates. So it is truly an honor to be here with you all today. I have spent the majority of my career, as my bio mentioned, working across various sectors and really championing public-private partnerships, because I believe when we break silos and we build together, we're able to have a stronger and a more long-lasting impact. Our team at Second Muse, which is where I currently work, has witnessed firsthand over the past decade what happens when we champion future economies that are more inclusive, sustainable, and equitable. The best solutions, technologies, and ideas get funded and are deployed. What is evident through the work that I do every day and the amazing founders that I speak with, as well as the corporate innovation arms, investors, and foundations that have come together to explore how can we really solve for the climate crisis, how can we create more energy efficient economies, is that collaboration is key, and that none of us can solve, the huge problems that our world is facing alone. I'm inspired by innovators who have the audacity to build companies in this space that oftentimes require, a longer road to market entry, but also a lot more capital. They tend to be a lot more capital intensive in terms of hardware solutions and manufacturing processes. And I'm sure a lot of folks who are tuning in are very familiar with all of these aspects. And so it's just been such an incredible ride to launch Venture for Climate Tech over the past year. We are a early stage climate tech venture studio, an accelerator hybrid model, helping the best ideas get to prototype and really understand how they can scale over the next 5 to 10 years. We consider ourselves at the earliest stage of de-risking climate technology and really thinking about what are those last mile solutions that we need in order to actually reach the climate goals that we have, not only in New York State, where we're based, but also across the globe, as many of our founders actually are not based in New York City, but have an application here. So again, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm extremely inspired by the rest of the winners. I want to acknowledge Peter's family and just say, I hope he rests in peace. And it sounds like he's done remarkable work while he's been in this industry. Additionally, I want to thank my immediate team working on the studio with me. We have a strong but mighty team, and every day we show up to support our founders, to think about innovation across various sectors and really start to connect the dots between technology, development, project finance. I think all of the varied just expertise that goes into implementing solutions that we know will have a greater impact for communities. And I also want to name the Women of Color Collective in sustainability that I started really as a passion project 2 years ago, acknowledging that I felt many of the rooms that I was in didn't reflect my own my own identity. And so I felt that it was important that we created space for women of color working in sustainability, not only in terms of community, but also to acknowledge their expertise and what they bring uniquely to this industry. And so I'm excited about what it looks like when all of us continue to partner to not only, support the best solutions, but also the best talent and those who really have the skill sets to drive the goals that we're working towards. So thank you all again for having me here today. It's such a pleasure. I'm really excited about all the work that everyone who's shown up today is championing, and I'm looking forward to potentially collaborating with you all to build great solutions that will sustain people and planet over time.
Thanks so much, Shante, for not only your impact, but for those comments and the teams that you have led. Let me also acknowledge on behalf of the organizers, Michael Stowe, who's being recognized for his devotion to encouraging long-term and widespread industrial energy efficiency and strategic energy management. Just to give you a little bit of background on Mike, he's a senior energy engineer at Advanced Energy in Raleigh, North Carolina, specializing in industrial process energy efficiency and strategic energy management. He has over 30 years of involvement in manufacturing plants and energy efficiency work, including roles as a maintenance manager, facility plant engineer, and energy engineer. Mike has extensive experience with many industrial processes and all types of plant facility support systems. Mike works with utilities, industrial equipment vendors, and manufacturing plant teams to find the best technical and most energy efficient solutions for industrial processes. He has earned numerous credentials and certifications and is a nationally recognized subject matter expert on ISO 50001 and SEM. He serves on several Industrial Process Trade Association and ISO 50001 related boards and committees. He was a mechanical engineer, got a degree from Georgia Tech. Also served in the US Navy on nuclear powered submarines. So with that, Mike, I'll give it to you for comments.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the honor from ACEEE and appreciate the ability to work in the energy industry. For many, many years, I manufactured things, made stuff, and worked. And energy was always part of my job, but more in the background. And I finally got the opportunity to go work for an energy consulting firm. And now I go talk to the people that are in the roles I used to be in and help them with their plant and their manufacturing. I would really like to thank several people, several of the agencies we work for, the federal government, Department of Energy, Federal Energy Management, FEMP, Oak Ridge National Labs, Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. They have provided us great opportunity for training and working with energy management within their programs. And also Duke Energy in the Carolinas. There's a program in North Carolina where Duke Energy funds Advanced Energy to go do energy assessments at manufacturing and commercial sites. And we look at everything from the air compressors to the processes and really try to make, if you're making bricks, we want to help you make more bricks with less energy. That's kind of what we really try to look for and provide that. One thing I will say, we continue to see over the past several years much more interest in carbon reduction, carbon footprint reduction. We get lots of inquiries about that, and people are using energy efficiency and process improvements and energy efficiency improvements across their manufacturing plants and sites to help reduce their carbon footprint. And many times the driving factor behind someone wanting an energy assessment or a help with an energy implementation of a project is to reduce their carbon footprint. So we see a great deal of that moving forward. Again, thank you all very much. I would like to recognize a couple people at Advanced Energy. I would not be able to do the things I do without them. My manager, CC Maurer, business development manager, Kip Butler, who works great and helps me to get business going, and Christy Broad and Jonathan Susser, who help with our marketing and deployment of our program. So thanks to all of you. And again, thank you to ACEEE. I really appreciate it and look forward to working more, making more stuff with less energy. Thanks.
For all the champions of energy efficiency, we'd like to thank you for your multiple contributions over many years, the teams that you've led, the impact that you've had with your partners. But don't stop here. Keep it going, because we look forward to those additional impacts, and certainly if they're needed, as Mike said, that there is a transition here to including carbon. And as you reduce energy, you're reducing carbon, and that's definitely part of this story of this panel of sustainability and industrial decarbonization. So with that, we'll close this session and invite you to look forward to the next sessions coming up.